Hey everybody, it's Mike Iskovich. Time for Mondays with Mike, and we got some tropics to talk about today. We also have some smoke wafting across North America that I want to show you. But first things first, today's first item of interest is what I have here, which is an updated forecast from the team at Colorado State University and their tropical forecasting project. They just announced that they are now increasing their prediction for the number of storms this hurricane season. Not a dramatic increase, but when they first released their report in April, second week of April, their prediction was for 13 named storms this year. Well, they have now upped that to 15 named storms. And so I want to talk a little bit about why they've done that. First, I want to go ahead. I'll share some pictures with you as I read you what is sort of going into their reasoning. So this is one of the things that we're talking about here, and this is what's called sea surface temperature anomalies, SST anomalies. And where you see yellow here on the map or red, that means that there's a warm anomaly, which means it's warmer than average for this time of the year. So this is what they have to say. Colorado State University hurricane researchers have increased their forecast slightly and are now predicting a near average hurricane season in 2023. El Nino development appears imminent. Okay. And I'll show you that right here real quick with my annotation. Right here is right there. See where that blue is? That's the El Nino. That's where it's red across that equatorial region of the Pacific. So that's the El Nino. So El Nino appears imminent as water temperatures across the eastern and central tropical Pacific have anomalously warmed over the past couple of months. And so that's what I just showed you. Now, the tropical and subtropical Atlantic sea surface temperatures are also now warmer than normal. So we're talking about this area right there. That second blue oval, that's the area that also is showing above average temperatures. And so as we talked about in our hurricane special, and it's still the case, is that you do have these competing factors where the El Nino almost always suppresses the formation of hurricanes. But at the same time, you've got this really warm water there that would tend to cause more hurricanes to form. And they go on to talk about the tropical Pacific Ocean, and some uncertainty as to how strong the El Nino will be, because a weak El Nino has negligible effects. A small El Nino a powerful El Nino can have much more wide-ranging effects as it tends to increase shear. So you get this right here in this middle part of the screen. When that's warmer, it creates a bigger contrast between the warm, really warm water of the equator and then the cooler air off toward the north. And so you'll get a jet stream that forms there, and that tends to sort of chop the top off of Atlantic hurricanes, which is why we see fewer of them typically. All right, so the new forecast from Colorado State is predicting let's see, above average season. On average, we have 14 named storms, 14 storms that become hurricanes in a typical year. And now they are predicting 15 of those. They're also using other longer term computer models besides their typical, just the El Nino and the Atlantic temperatures as far as predicting how many hurricanes. They're going to issue their next update on July 6th and then again on August 3rd. There is an area that could be developing right now, and it is over here. Whoops, I meant to show you something different here. So, let me clear my annotations here. Right here. So we are in the Atlantic Ocean, and okay, so Texas is over here, and way over here, over the Azores Islands is an area where there is a 10% chance for development, and that really is just a concern right now for France and Spain. And Portugal. Anywhere on that side of the world is where they have some of the exposure to some of these weird Eastern Atlantic tropical systems that form. I mean, rarely do they ever get, take a direct hit from a hurricane or anything like that. But systems like this can bring rain to the Iberian Peninsula over there, and parts of our neck of the woods don't get affected at all when they stay over there. All right, here's another map that shows us. So we talked about why they increased these numbers, and we talked about sea surface temperature anomalies, which is a mouthful to say. So I want to just turn your attention to what's happening here in the middle part of the screen, which is this map right here, which is sea surface temperature anomalies. And so we want to look for anywhere that's orange or red and compare it to any areas that happen to be blue. So in this case, there's only a small area up here of the Gulf of Mexico, actually an area that just had Tropical Storm Arlene, and that one is below average. But the rest of the area here, we're talking about much of the Gulf of Mexico, definitely here in the Western Caribbean, much of the Atlantic Ocean, all of those are above average. And in fact, we can even switch this view from Western Atlantic to what they call the tropical Atlantic. And you'll see here, it's a little bit difficult to tell where we are. Africa's on one side of the screen, and you'll see like Puerto Rico and South America there on the other side of the screen. But once again, this is an area that is warm across the board, everywhere from the island of Hispaniola, from the Caribbean islands, all the way back out here to Africa. This whole, Atlantic basin is having above average temperatures. And so that's where it's kind of like, I know I could see what they're looking at and saying, I know we have the El Nino, but with water temperatures that warm, it's like, you can't really ignore that. Plus, I think, honestly, they had to add to their numbers. I mean, if you think about it, from their point of view, when you get these little surprise storms, real small ones, like what happened with Tropical Storm Arlene at the end of last week, it's this little tiny piddly storm that was up in the northeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, and it just spun up real quickly and just very briefly became a named storm. Because remember, they're forecasting named storms, which means something that becomes a tropical storm or a hurricane. And it's almost like they have to take that into account now, that there could be these small, insignificant storms that now are going to throw off their totals. You see what I mean? So if they were predicting 13 named storms, and now they're on June 1st, the very first day of hurricane season, now all of a sudden they had this little tiny storm that briefly got upgraded right to a named tropical system. It barely was. Well, now they're looking at their numbers and saying, well, wait a minute. Now, we weren't expecting that. So now we almost have to add that onto our prediction. So if their previous prediction was 13, that's number 14 right there. So I don't know if they're necessarily thinking that way. That's the way I'm thinking is, well, they've already had one, so might as well revise the forecast and add one or two. So that's what they've done. And so that's the deal with that. Also, by the way, they do now make some predictions as to location of landfalls. For example, the United States coastline, the entire United States coastline from Maine to, South Padre Island, has a 43% chance of a hurricane making landfall. That's average. The 120-year average or the 140-year average is 43%. What about the Gulf of Mexico? A 27% chance of a hurricane strike this year, which is average. In an average year, we have a 27% chance of a hurricane strike. So really, in all, we're not really learning anything too wild from this, which is that we're still expecting sort of an average year, or in an alternative to saying we're expecting an average year is to say, we don't really know what's going to happen with the El Nino, so we don't 100% know what's going to happen. Be right back. All right, had to go break away and take care of something real quick. But so now, okay, so we've taken care of the update on hurricane season. I want to show you what's happening up in Canada. So there's been an outbreak of wildfires up there, really, really nasty. In fact, across much of the country. Over the last month or so, it's primarily been in Western Canada, in the province of Alberta. Over here, there were several wildfires. In fact, the map you're looking at right now is a map of smoke plumes across the United States and Canada. Each one of these dots, by the way, represents an observation site, an air quality observation monitor. So it was in Western Canada earlier, but now there have been some terrible fires that have been burning in Quebec. And so we can go up here and see all of these red dots that are showing up. So just to get you acquainted to where we are. So middle of your screen here is Buffalo, New York. So let me just go ahead and circle that real quick. So here's Buffalo and Toronto. And up here is Montreal. And then here's the Great Lakes. So that this is Lake Superior, Lake Huron. So this is I'll just tell you why it's a big deal, is that this smoke can cover a very large area, bigger than you would think. You know, it's not just like one of these things where there's a fire burning in a city and it really just is a smoke plume in the city. This has very wide-ranging effects. So when you open things up a little bit here, you'll see next to where my head is here is basically where the fires are. And that smoke plume is being pushed down into the United States, New York State, Ohio and Pennsylvania and all of this. And actually some of that smoke potentially could make it to the Gulf Coast and our region. Can't rule that out. You can actually click on some of the sensors up here. This is in Wisconsin. Unhealthy air quality levels, and that's because of that particulate matter. Up here in Canada, unhealthy air quality levels. Some of that is even dropping here around, let's say, Buffalo, New York, moderate air quality. So this is going to be an issue across this area for several days at least, you know, maybe even more than that. So definitely something that might become a story across the country, you know, as well as, you know, not just for Houston, but across the northern part of the country, and then eventually for Houston. I also want to show you too that when you go down here to Mexico, you see down here, Honduras, Mexico, you see how there's this gray area here. That indicates smoke plumes there too. And this is all those agricultural fires that we talk about. They do this slash and burn farming method, kind of old-fashioned farming method, where, you know, they're done with that season's crop and you cut it down and you burn it, and then that creates fertilizer for the next round of things that you're going to plant. Now, we do get some of that blowing up into Texas. That's actually more common. But in this case, we have it coming in from the north and from the south. So you may notice a little bit of haze out there. And it is coming from a combination of local effects, along with a little bit of smoke from Mexico, and possibly later this week, some smoke coming down from Canada. And that's the last thing I wanted to leave you with, which was that it looks like we're going to get really hot. So beginning of the week here, you know, when you're watching this, the main concern is heavy rain for today, for Monday, the 5th of June, maybe Tuesday, the 6th as well. But later on this week and heading into the weekend and next week, could be looking at mid 90s, upper 90s, and parts of Texas could be hitting up to 105 potentially, according to the GFS model next week. So we will keep an eye on that. So hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me here for Mondays with Mike. I've got a lean cuisine that I got to eat. I've got a meeting that I've got to go update people, all kind of stuff going on, mass hysteria, dogs and cats living together, all of that stuff. So shout out to my mom and Neil. See you guys in tomorrow, or 2 days. See you guys in 2 days. So everybody have a great day. Watch out for some of those thunderstorms later today. Bye.